Peter Maravellis here. I hope this finds you all safe and well. On behalf of City Lights booksellers and publishers, I'd like to welcome you to City Lights Live, the virtual reading series that continues in the footsteps of our in-store calendar during the time of the pandemic. We continue to celebrate the works of authors we know and love with readings, discussions, and forums moving into the winter season. So tonight is a bit of a homecoming for us. We've had the pleasure of hosting Josh Mohr since his early beginnings at the writing game, going back to $2 radio days, I think. And we've had a lot of great fun along the way. I think that lunch party for Fight Song over at Winston Smith's studio had to have been kind of one of my all-time favorites, complete with Greek chorus. I think who was it? It was like Tony DeShane. I think it was like John Longy, Daphne Gottlieb.
Wasn't Bucky there? Bucky Sinister?
Bucky, yeah, Bucky was still in town.
Right.
God, man, that was like such a crazy event.
Yeah, Daphne Gottlieb was there too, right?
Yeah. So definitely had some good times together. So, and really a great honor to have you back and, for us to launch, another really awesome book. So this time it's a memoir. It's called Model Citizen. And in it, Josh bears all. I got to say, the guy really knows how to pull those heartstrings, and it took a lot of courage to write this book. So for those of you who don't know Josh, he's the author of 5 novels, including Some Things That Meant the World to Me, Termite Parade, Damascus, Fight Song, of course, All This Life, as well as another memoir titled Sirens. His work has been lauded by the New York Times. He received an editor's choice status there, as well as having received bestseller status with the San Francisco Chronicle. Also, both those papers just recently wrote really cool kind of reviews of the current book. So check those out. His previous novel, All This Life, won the Northern California Book Award. Josh is the founder of Decant Editorial. So tonight he's going to be joined by another really awesome writer, fabulous Lidia Yuknavitch, who is also no stranger to City Lights. She's the national bestselling author of the novels The Book of Joan and The Small Backs of Children. She has received numerous honors for her work, including an Oregon Book Award and a PNBA Award. Her work has appeared in Guernica, in Ms. Magazine, the Iowa Review, Zizova, Exquisite Corpse, and a bunch of other places. Her most recent work is called Verge. It's an awesome short story collection. We had the pleasure of hosting her just recently for that. So before we start, I'd like to let you all know we will be posting links in the chat function with which you may purchase books. This is very, very important. We need you to purchase books tonight to support Josh's publisher, to support Josh, also to keep these programs going. City Lights is not out of the woods as far as COVID. So please, please, please do buy a book. We're also going to be taking questions for the Q&A that's going to come at the end of the evening. So you may also post your questions there. Man, such a pleasure to have you both back. Josh, Lidia, great to see you both. Welcome to City Lights Live.
Hello, everybody. Gosh, I'm so happy to see you. I know that we are in a room where we can smell each other's armpits and smell each other's breath. So we're doing it a little bit differently tonight. But what I'm hoping is that we can make like the chat function like a David Wallace novel. Like, let's just have as much like community as we possibly can in this digital ecosystem that might try to modify some sort of analog environment. I'm thrilled to be here. City Lights is always the place that I try to launch new work at. I mean, I wear a City Lights tattoo on my arm. I've always have considered that to be like nerd church for me. Like when I go up there, it's like a little cathedral. So Peter and Stacy Lewis, thank you very much for being such amazing advocates over the years. And now we just get to all nerd out and have some fun together tonight. Before I read, I wanted to tell you a little bit about my day today. As a writer, you kind of only get a handful, if you're lucky, of book launches. So each one is kind of special in its own way. So I wanted to kind of tell you how my very special book launch day started. Woke up kind of early, excited. Email from a publicist. Oh, nice words in the Chronicle, nice words in the New York Times. I have my requisite 67 shots of espresso. I'm feeling really good. I'm all hopped up on my novelist narcissism. I'm an unstoppable force. And quite literally, my first step outside the door was into this marvelous pile of dog shit. Now, when I say marvelous, you're probably thinking to yourself, what made it marvelous, Josh? That's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. It was voluminous, certainly. It seemed as though the dog was eating a balanced, healthy diet. It was just, but what blew my mind about it was just the placement. It was just there waiting for me to walk outside. In this like perfect literary yin yang. Here's the book launch. Here's your marvelous pile of shit. And aren't we all alive? Which just seems like the perfect lesson for me to take into a reading together. The other thing I wanted to mention to you today is that normally when I have readings, I don't really get very nervous. But today I have been a little nervous. And I think a lot of it has to do with I've never had a book come out that has like my dumb mug splattered all over the cover. So I'm feeling like a different anxiety than I have ever felt before. And I was thinking the best way that I could mitigate those feelings of embarrassment as we're getting started to like get out of it was that all I need to do is just tell you something that's even more embarrassing. And if I tell you something that's even more embarrassing than that, then who cares, right? Suddenly it's no big deal. So I wanted to start by admitting something. And I realize that I'm going to lose some friends over this. There are colleagues out there that might think less of me when all of this is said and done. But I love you and I trust you. And it's time that all of you know that I fucking love the song Zombie by the Cranberries. Now, it's possible that you've never heard the song Zombie by the Cranberries, which is an egregious offense. And I just wanted to take a little bit of time for you to let it wash over you. A little bit of time for you to kind of just feel its majesty, maybe feel its poetry. It's kind of like, think about it like this. She's so earnest, this woman. She's a little Irish girl named Dolores. And I can prove to you how much I love it. I don't know where he is, but somewhere on this checkerboard is my writing partner in Hollywood, Ron Curry. Ron and I were in LA together on the day that Dolores passed, God bless her. And I insisted that we listen to this song over and over and over again. It's beautiful, it's romantic, and over the years I've come to think about it as sort of like, the song has all the feels from the Billy Corgan's poem. This song is like what it would feel like if a rainbow could talk. Zombie is what Prozac takes when it's feeling depressed. And now you can feel it, right? So if you ever see me walking down the street, if you ever see me baking a cake, making a couture down, practicing karate, this is what's going on in my head over and over. Zombie by the Cranberries. It's what I love. It's what I know. And now all my anxiety has gone out the window. We can just talk about some art. I didn't try to write this book. This is the only book of mine that I didn't set out to write. Every other book I've sort of written on my own and then tried to sell after the fact. This was the publisher's idea. They had read Fight Song. They had read Sirens. And of all absurd communications, I got a Facebook note from this woman who said she was a senior editor at FSG. And I immediately thought to myself, which of my friends is mean enough to play this trick on me, right? Like, obviously that's not that easy. It must be somebody else. But she was real, Her name's Daphne. She's super cool. Maybe she's here tonight. I don't know. And we wrote this book together. And the first thing she had asked me was, is there more story? You know, is there more story to go on after Sirens? Sirens was about me having 3 strokes in my 30s, me having this heart surgery that was supposed to change everything. And I wrote this book because it did. So I'll read for about 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes, and then I want to nerd out and have a conversation with Auntie Lidia Yuknavitch. And she is one of my favorite writers, one of my favorite humans, and I'm totally blessed to be able to do this with her tonight. So I'm going to read to you what happened about 2 years after Sirens finished. I'm folding laundry and I'm watching an old Cassavetes flick in the living room. It's about 2 in the afternoon and nature calls as I am mismatching my Argyle socks on purpose. Haven't worn matching socks in probably 20 years, hipster power, and I toss the latest horrible clashing pair of patterns in the pile. Jump up to hit the head, and as I walk, shit, there's a pop in my head. The feeling vanishing from my right arm, numb, utter dead weight, won't respond to any of my mind's commands, and it's impossible. This can't be happening again. I've been fixed. So I maybe pretend like it's not a stroke. I take a shower. Why? I don't know why. I stand there and breathe deeply, thinking that it might solve the problem, and my right arm doesn't work, and I'm talking slowly, but I am talking, and I'm making sense, I think. I keep trying to say to myself, calm down, hoping maybe this is some screaming panic attack and my arm's gonna be fine. This isn't a stroke. It can't possibly be a fucking stroke. Get out of the shower. Don't dry off. I can hear the Cassavetes flick in the other room. I follow the noise. Now I'm wet and naked, just standing in the living room next to that pile of mismatched Argyle socks as I stagger around the house, still saying, calm down, just dripping all over the place. I'm okay, I say. This will pass, I say. I shouldn't be having number 4 because I'm fixed. Someone tells you they've repaired your hearts. Someone tells you that there's nothing to worry about right after the surgery, and not even 3 years later, here I am, wet and naked, a clot cooking my brain. I'm the only one home, and I'm not getting the feeling back in my arm, and it's been about 10 minutes since it happened, and I know I need to call it in. No, I need to admit that it's happening again. There's no way to pretend. There's no way to escape. Stop being so cavalier. First, I call Lilo at work, then 911. I'm in an ambulance a few minutes later, and we speed to the University of Washington, yet another teaching hospital. So I'll need to remember not to let some first-year student torture me with her first spinal tap again. And it's strange. 1 minute you have 2 working arms, now only 1 working arm. And I didn't put the Argyle socks away, left those Cassavetes characters talking shit in my living room. I've tried to waste this life so many times, and now it's the only thing I want. CAT scan, chest x-ray, off to an MRI suite, my head in their talking tube, trying to abide by their instructions to stay perfectly still as they bombard my skull with their bonks and knocks and whirs for 45 minutes, but I start to cry, convinced I'll miss most of Ava's life. I don't move my face to the tube, the tears just stream, the facts screeching at me, 4 strokes, 4 strokes, 4. Between blood tests and Dopplers, between visitors and naps, 2 days pass in the hospital. I still can't feel my right arm. It's gone. I am a one-armed man named Josh. That's just the way it is now. It's late. It's after midnight. I'm in my hospital room and I can't sleep and I'm out of water. So I call the nurse and she's coming to help. And I walk into the bathroom to take a leak before she gets there and I look in the mirror. I've never hated a face more, never been so disappointed and humiliated and ashamed to be myself. The man who can't stop killing himself, the brain that wants to turn itself into crap and scrambled eggs. So I take my good arm and make a good fist and take a good swing right in my face. Boom, the nose, now one more, blood, a lot of it, gushing on my hospital gown. And that's when the nurse walks in. She stands, we both do. My nose is still bleeding. I'm okay, I say to her. I've been thinking about this scene a lot from her perspective. What she must have seen as the blood forms a puddle on the front of my gown. I want to explain it to her. I want her to understand why, with my one good arm, I had no choice but to smash my face. I'm down a limb. Look, I know we aren't promised anything. No, some of us never even make it from the womb, dead before our parents kiss our faces. But I also know something else, someone else, a little girl named Ava. So long as I have one good arm left, I'll fight to stay here, to be with her. Nothing comes from the nurse at first, looking at me and the damage done, wondering if she should call psych, tie me up, shoot me loopy with drugs to keep me from further injury. But I want to explain, no, I don't want to die. It's the opposite. It's finally the opposite. I want to keep living and I hate this body. Doesn't seem to share that wish. This body wants to take me out. So it should be hit. So it should be punished until it wants to live as much as me. I got a nosebleed, I say to the nurse, but she sees the blood on the knuckles, the holes in my story. Maybe she's overtired. Maybe she's silently punching herself in the face for her life's own letdowns. Or maybe she doesn't care. All I know is she turns and walks out, and I stare at my mug in the mirror. Me, the monster. Me, the man. How we find ways to be both prophets and predators, how our parents will remain mysteries, how we'll remain mysteries to ourselves, how there are no real answers coming to us, how a heart is fixed until it's not, how we are all the unrepairables. These lives of ours, they don't make a lick of sense. If you told me a shooting star was just some disgruntled angel using a lighter to burn God, I would believe that. Makes about as much sense as anything else in this withdrawing world. Give me 2 seconds. I forgot to plug my computer in because I'm stupid. I'll be right back.
He's gone. Hold on. Oh, so good though. He can't hear you. Go like just like throw it at him. So amazing. They love you, Joshua Mohr. I'm gonna kill some time.
All right, we're almost done anyways.
Go for it.
The feeling starts coming back slowly in my right arm on my third night in the hospital. By day 5, it's normal. And I'm finally allowed to go outside for a little while by myself. I limp down 4 flights of stairs, stand in the sunlight. I wiggle the fingers on my right hand. I love watching them work. I've never been happier to see these fingers move. I use 2 to pluck a blackberry off a bush and pop it in my mouth, and it's the best thing I've ever tasted. This berry is straight from a fucking Walt Whitman poem. This berry was pulled from a bush by a hand that rose from the dead. Day 6. The doctors perform their last tests, so many tests, and here are the results from all of them. They still don't know. Thanks.
You can hear my little clap. Beautiful, 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 beautiful.
Thanks, Lydia.
Thank you for reading and writing your book, which I need to say off the top, and I don't say this about a lot of books, makes me feel seen, in addition to whatever else I experience about your writing, which we can talk about, but not very many books make me feel seen. It's rare. It's a big rarity. So thank you for being in the world during the same time I'm in the world, because it makes it
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah. So inside that amazing scene, we'd all agree, I bet, is this kind of war, a little bit. Like the moment where you punch the face,
Yeah,
the mirror, there's like this war between, it's kind of between living and dying.
yeah.
Like wanting to live and being pissed off at the body and the mug and the mirror, and the nurse is there. You're in a healing space. You're supposedly in the space of healing.
Theoretically, right?
Right. And so, but the reader gets to experience this schism between the life Josh and the death Josh, and
Right.
like the punch in the mirror is a moment of that. And a couple of things occur there, one of which is shame, another of which is rage, a type of rage,
Yeah.
inside this schism of the two Joshes. So can you talk a little bit, you have image after image in the book of this moment of schism.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit like about that kind of schism moment and how you find rage there, and you find we see shame there. Shame is a very complicated thing in your book.
Right.
And then there'll be like Ava. And
the North Star, right?
Yeah. North Star, yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. I think you and I have that in common, that we're both interested in juxtapositions, that we're both interested in putting images next to each other, or in kind of adjacent sequences and chapters that on first blush might not seem cohesive. They might, you might feel kind of obfuscated at first until you're kind of finding your way into the labyrinth.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the light and the dark, that is from a leitmotif perspective. Like I introduced that in the opening image of the book. Like it's me at 5 years old, like stabbing myself with a pencil.
Right.
And then we end in the fun house with all these different versions of myself, like having a conversation. I think the book is a lot about coming to grips with all the complexities that make you you. In my world, what that means is, how do I be a father? How do I be a more successful husband in this marriage than I was in my previous marriage?
Right with you, baby.
How do I show up? How do I learn from my mistakes? Because I'm a fantastically slow learner. And a lot of it kind of sprung organically from researching the book. And once I found out that the guy who invented the surgery that quote unquote saved my life was a Nazi doctor, well, that was interesting to me. Because all of a sudden, like, I couldn't play the like bad guy, good guy card.
Right.
Here's a cat who in the 1920s in one shining moment changed the world, has saved millions of lives. And then in the 1930s, he's patching up Nazis on the Russian front.
Right.
So what do you do with that? Like, we live in this era where everybody wants it to be a binary. It's good or it's bad. It's a 0 or it's 1. And memoir doesn't work that way, or at least a truthful memoir doesn't work that way.
Agree.
So if you're interested in authenticity, then you have to not concern yourselves with like the good person or the bad. You want to be that person in the middle. That's this beautiful tangle of strengths and weaknesses. That's where the prodigals live. Those of us it takes a little bit more effort to love. Those are my people, and I really try to honor that in every page here.
Well, that's one of my favorite things about both Sirens and Model Citizen, is that you kind of pull apart binaries of good and bad, or judgments of right and wrong, or good and bad, and write in between the binary, and write alive the people who live there, the feelings they have. And oftentimes you're writing straight down the throat of a terrible mistake or fucked up thing that you did, since not fiction. And by writing into the mistake, it helps the reader see that the so-called failure or mistake or badness or bad move that culturally, we are judged by, is exactly the only place to learn anything about living a life.
Yeah. And to me, art is always about this extension of, it's like these little empathy bullets. Like, I feel like as long as I bring an open heart to the festivities, if I do that authentically, that the reader will bring her own open heart to it as well. And it becomes this moment that we get to share, even people that I'll never have the privilege of meeting in person. Like, I believe that this is just in suspended animation until a reader is generous enough to bring it to life with her imagination and her heart. So I need her presence in order for this to do anything.
Right, to activate the energy of it, or
yeah, and I also believe that this is like, straight out of Dreamcatcher, California, right? So feel free to fucking puke on the floor if this drives you crazy. But like, I also believe that books, especially memoirs, are conch shells. And like, if you hold it up to your ear, like, you can hear the very flawed human heart of that particular auteur who put that narrative together. Like, I love that about reading. I mean, like you, Lydia, I was a reader before I was a writer.
Yeah.
And those were the storytellers that I was like, oh my God, you can do this? You can make me feel this way? I mean, to me, that's where the magic happens.
Agree. I think books are alive, and they activate readers on creative vibration. When that happens, that's the whole jam. But readers who read passively and just, let it sit on their face, it's not what interests me. Your books make you feel something in your actual body, and you have to make some choices while you're in there reading them. But you said a word a second ago. You have a different definition of some concepts and some words than your average person on the street has, and one of them is around shame, but another one is around empathy. Mm-hmm. You have a great little sequence about chum in the face, but can you talk a little bit about what's empathy to you? That word's being thrown around a lot lately.
Yeah.
But what's empathy to you?
This is obviously a super idiosyncratic definition of the world. So I don't want to hear any fucking dictionary definitions in the chat function correcting me, okay? This is not what I'm going for here.
Right, that's why I asked you. I would prefer your definition.
Like, I like hard-won empathy. I like lessons learned from broken hearts and broken noses. I like the things in my life that were probably the most difficult to get through or felt the most insurmountable at the time, are the things that now that I look back on and I cherish those things that we all have to deal with in our own kind of coming of age. What I like about memoirs specifically is it allows me to put two versions of myself in conversation. There's always the version of the memoirist who's kind of going through the sequence of events, who's living through stroke 4 when I'm reading it to you.
Yeah.
But then, there's also that person who exists outside, what I would call like the meta narrator. Like, I'm constantly inviting the reader into the construction of the book. I'm pointing out that this is an artifice and that I'm writing it with you or writing it in real time. Like, sometimes I tell you where we're writing it and why we're writing certain scenes in certain ways. So I don't think empathy just extends one way. Yeah. Like, what I'm trying to do by inviting the audience into the book's construction is to kind of cultivate and nurture complicity. right? So we become like one. We become one thing. In fact, there's a quick paragraph
Do
that
it.
let me read to you really quickly.
Do it.
Um, this is all one sentence, by the way, in like Lidia Yuknavitch school. It says, seeing as how you and me are grafting and growing together, diluting our senses, my heart becoming yours, my mind seducing your set of perceptions, holding them, well, not hostage exactly, as that makes it sound sort of adversarial. And we are the furthest things from enemies. On the contrary, we are slowly becoming each other, which makes the whole hostage idea goddamn ridiculous. You can't hold yourself hostage. That's impossible. Leave us alone. We are just two consenting adults dissolving any boundaries between our brains, watching them form a new murky world. Wasabi melting in soy sauce. You dissolving in me, us a whole new vibrant animal. And so if I told you about my motorcycle assisted suicide, you wouldn't hold it against me, right? This idea being that like, I'm going to take you to the things in my life that have made me ache the most. I want to try to recreate those in some way. So not only that you can viscerally experience, but I want it to be an inside the body thing. I don't want you to be reading this as though you're outside watching it. I wanted to write it to kind of channel the modernists. You know, it's one of the reasons I cherish Virginia Woolf so much. Like, if you ain't read To the Lighthouse, you should read it this week because it's
Homework.
a stone cold killer on display. And she's so good at that. Like, she makes you feel as though you're going through this. And in so doing, that like that empathy bridge unites you in such a way that we became the same person. And I love that about art. I love that art allows me to look through James Baldwin's eyes and Amy Hempel's eyes and Dennis Johnson's eyes. That's one of the reasons I keep going back to art. It's always the same story. What do we have, like 12 stories if we're lucky?
According to Vonnegut, there's 6.
And why it's being told. You know, we hear people say in writing workshops, and usually in this voice, what's at stake for the character? But I would say a better question is, what's at stake for you as the writer? Like, if you don't have skin on the game, if there's not blood on the page, what are you doing? And that's kind of, that always tries to be kind of the standard that I kind of hold my art to.
Heard. Secular amen on that. I have a question I kind of want to ask. It's been asked of me too, if I'm trying to do something different on the page than the trope or the cliche of suffering makes you stronger. And every time I try to answer that question, I get in the weeds a little bit.
So typically, how would you answer that question?
When I start going on it, my initial gut reaction is like, no, I'm not writing that same kind of from Christian sin and redemption, suffering makes you stronger trope. Yeah. But then when I try to talk about that, I think I end up saying something like, and I'd love to know what you would say, suffering is a portal. And you can either do what your culture told you to do with it and follow those rules, or you can go look at what art has to say about it and see how you connect or don't connect.
I love that. I love that.
Oh, okay, then we're good.
I think I would agree with everything you're saying. The only thing that I would kind of say in terms of model citizen, and I've got some old students here that can attest that they've heard me say this a billion times. Like, one of the things that I'm always trying to do in my work is to give the characters the dignity of complexity. Mm-hmm. That phrase is very important to me. It's on my office wall. And the only way, and we know that we want complicated characters on the page, but then the question is, okay, I know I want that, but how the fuck do I do it? And for me, it always comes back down to having the brazenness or having the audacity to show certain characters from a multitude of angles. Mm-hmm. Right? So you'll see me as a professor, and you can see me as a father and as a husband, but you also have to see me as a junkie. You have to see me as a criminal. You have to see me, you know, doing literal and metaphorical felonies right from the rip here until, you know, page the end. Yeah. I'm going to trust you with that unfettered access. I'm going to give you all the information, and I'm hoping that you're willing to do the work with me instead of just being like, ew. That's gross. That's a bad person. Like life's messy. You know, I heard Paul Harding say one time, and it's something that I've really brought into my own work too. He said, I don't have a problem with the axiom, write what you know. But he wanted to add something to the end of it. He said, write what you know, but never write what you understand. And I love that because I'm the question is what brings me back to memoir. Why did this happen? Why this system of life experience led to this, and why this led to this, and why it led to this, and start to figure some things out. Honoring the past, you know, hopefully to try to do right by the future.
Yeah, I really love that phrase, the dignity of complexity. It also, in your books, brings me to, you keep regret as a very complicated and rich and interesting space rather than, I shouldn't have done that, I'm bad. Like regular regret isn't what shows up in your pages. It's like, can you talk about like regret a little bit? Because I too write about the Lydias I've been and the Lydia I am, and how that's a very full world of likable and unlikable stuff.
The menagerie of Lydias, is that what we're talking
The
about?
menagerie of Lydia.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that we'll have to see, this iteration of a person. Here I was in 1979. Here I am in 1983 and 1991, and then obviously there's a riff that's running, and it's not up to date. This book stops when my daughter's in kindergarten.
Yeah.
He's almost 8 now, so we're kind of 3 years behind schedule. But every book is an opportunity for me to kind of look around our status quo and to be like, okay, what's going on right now? What are the things around here? What's the kindling? If I just like look around and interrogate the props in our immediate vicinity, to go back to that word juxtaposition, what can I put this in conversation with? What are the other things that are going to make these kind of organic hops in the time machine fun for the audience? Because nothing is going to fuck your pacing up more than a misplaced flashback, right? Like that, totally, like everything just falls off a cliff there, right? So to figuring out like how and when to use those things as assets instead of liabilities is a really fun thing for me. And that's when I love revision so much. I'll write a rough draft because I have to, but the magic for me is in the revision process.
Oh, come to my house and give me that. I like the initial mess, and I'm the opposite, but you can feel free to teach me.
I'd love to do that. If we know what I do that's been really fun, only in the last couple of books, is once I kind of settle on the macro issues, if I've dialed in like the plot and the POV and all that bullshit, and I'm turning on to what I really like to do, which is the language.
Yeah.
Now I've started to revise exclusively orally. And it's a blast. Like,
yeah, that works for me.
I've read this out loud 100 times.
Yeah. That makes me want to ask you too. You do interesting things, chapter by chapter or sequence by sequence with endings. Okay. And you and I have some interesting connections that we do different things with endings than other people do. Some of you know this, some of you don't. I have an event in my life where my daughter was born and died on the same day. And ever after, on the page, I had to write endings differently. And Joshua has things in his life that I believe, which is where this question is coming from, make you attend to endings slightly differently than other writers, beautifully and differently and more complex than other writers. Can you speak a little bit to your sense of an ending and what endings do and don't do?
God, I think so. And that's an arcane question, but I'll do my best to try to put my feet on the ground.
You so got this.
I think, the other thing that happened with this fourth stroke is I was told by this like middle of the night cranky neurologist / cardiologist that I'm not going to live out of my 40s. And they're wrong about these things all the time. I mean, my dad was given, 3 months to live and lived several years. So I'm not saying what they told me was true, but it did. I mean, it's something that I've metabolized, and I know that that's an option out there. And what it's done on the page, hopefully, is created what I have dubbed kind of cheery nihilism. You know, it's not like the sort of nihilism where I'm like, oh, woe is me. This is so sad. What's happening to me? Ah. It's nihilism like, I don't know how much time I've got left here. I want to be a good dad. I want to make art like my ass is on fire. And
Exactly.
that's it. You know, so I think if I'm intuiting the question correctly,
You are.
it creates this idea of everything is so ephemeral. A lot of memoirists are trying to like wind up for this like grand conclusion.
Exactly.
And like I don't believe in that. And in fact, I
Exactly.
think memoirs that when the storyteller hops up for some fucking sermon at the end should like come with a bucket so you can just puke as soon as you're done like reading that paragraph. I don't want easy answers. I don't want things pat. I don't want things airbrushed. I don't want things varnished. I like the warts and all bloody truth. That's the stuff that fires me up as a storyteller. That's what I love as a reader. Again, you know, I would mention Baldwin and Hempel and Dennis Johnson before. I mean, I love those storytellers for that reason, because they resisted the easy answer.
Exactly.
They were never trying to put a bow on anything. They're like, we are alive and it's so confusing to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
here.
that's beautiful. And the writers that you're attracted to do the same thing to me when I read them as what happens to me when I read your work and I get to the end of a chapter or the end of a book. Rather than the conclusion or the resolution or some other traditional thing, I feel like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. And I don't mean that in a good or bad way. I just mean it's
Right.
exhilarating and
Yeah.
there's a leap.
Yeah.
And there's every chance in the world the leap will result in your flying. Like in that Sigur Rós song where the children get to the end of the cliff and they leap and you think, oh no, but they fly. And it's just like, I watch it every week of my life. That's how it feels to read.
What you just said there too is it also, I think, gets at like, you know, what are you trying to get good at as a storyteller? There's another exercise I do with my students all the time. Like, if you don't know what you're trying to get good at, how the hell are you going to get good at it? So I make an exercise where I make them define the word compelling, I make them define the word story, and then the interaction between the modifier and the noun is the style or as the aesthetic that you're trying to hone. And I do this exercise every New Year's Day. That's how much of a nerd I am. And a word that has stayed consistent is velocity. And like those writers that we were just talking about, like I can't put their books down. Like I have to, when I'm reading Baldwin, I have to remind myself to slow down because he just gets his hands on me and I'm just putty. So I'm always thinking about like, you know, what am I trying to do? I wanted you to lock in to what it's like to be an addict. I didn't want it to be, you were on the outside looking at me. I wanted the reader to feel as though she was sitting in my heart, understanding the daily work it is not to cop.
In her body, yeah.
Daily it is not to do it. So I do that by making it the most visceral, the most like velocity driven thing I can. I want to make your palms sweat. I want to make you uncomfortable. You know, the best definition of visceral I ever heard was that you're sitting in the front row of a playhouse and the actors are so involved in the production that their spit is hitting you in the face. Like that's visceral to me. And that's like one of the things I'm constantly trying to do when I'm putting a narrative together.
Love it. Love it. You know, I'm with you on that. I mean, if I have a goal as a writer that crosses what you're talking about, it's that, did you make the reader feel something in their body or not?
Yeah.
And if you didn't, then it's entertaining and surface. And if you did, it's a reason to keep going.
It sure is.
So beautiful mammals out there in the cubist configuration of gorgeousness and gallery view. You look like a cubist, beautiful painting. You must have some questions too, because I admit it, I hogged the time asking Joshua questions. And so now I'm checking in the chat. Do you have something else in the chat? You're dying to, oh, there's a baby.
That's
Hello,
my
baby.
niece. That's Penny. Hi, Penny.
That's your, oh God, hello, baby.
Somebody must have something they want to ask. We're pals. What's going on over there?
You could put it right in the chat.
Oh, is that true? I can look at that? Let's see.
Yeah, you can hit chat and look. I have something to tell you while we're waiting. There's a scene. I mean, this is a really well-known scene, but you talk about having blackouts and how once you started off in San Francisco and ended up in an airport in Tahoe, I think. And
Oops.
not only have you and I been in a Tahoe airport together, but
Yeah, haven't we?
that's a spatial important place for me because I left a husband once propped up against a wall, drunk, with a ticket in his pocket in the Tahoe airport. The reason was not that I didn't love him or that I was better than him, but I couldn't figure out how to save myself and get my own ass on the plane as drunk as I was.
Right.
And get his drunk ass asleep against the wall on a plane. And so we share this Tahoe airport interstitial moment of understanding the story of the addict and how the drunk story, the addict story is not good or bad. There's no logic to the drunk or addict story. It just is.
Yeah.
And you move through it, and your books open up that space for me. So
Yeah,
as you can
I always love that Flannery O'Connor bit where she talks about like the goal of a narrative is to be experienced meaning. You know, that like she doesn't want to ever tell anybody anything. Like she wants
that's
to
it.
pick the right image, she wants to render it properly so then the audience has the opportunity to experience the meaning that's actually cascading on the page.
Yeah.
And I think about that stuff all the time. Like, how can I make it seem like you on the outside are a surrogate? You know, like we're doing this together. And that's why I don't think about this as an addiction memoir. Like to me, this isn't an addiction memoir. And maybe that sounds like I'm splitting hairs. To me, this is a relapse memoir. Like, I think any idiot can get clean. I think staying clean is incredibly difficult. And I don't think that people want to think about how fragile their loved ones can be because they want to be like, oh, grandpa went to rehab. Everything's fine now, right? Like my kid cleaned up, my spouse cleaned up. And they don't really want to know that it's precarious.
Yeah.
And so another reason that I kind of wrote this was so that hopefully if you're loving somebody who's making it almost impossible to love them right now,
Yeah.
maybe this is an opportunity for you to see some things from their point of view. And maybe instead of being so frustrated or so angry, it might bring out something more graceful.
Love it. Mary wants to know, was this experience different than writing Sirens? I mean, I can see why someone would want to know that.
Yeah, especially, Mary, Sirens is actually in this book. So the first 150 pages of Model Citizen is Sirens, although I did a big remix of it. I wanted to take advantage of a super smart editor at FSG named Daphne Durham. And I would have been a fool not to take advantage of her cerebral energy. Like she's forgotten more about storytelling than I'll ever know. So we had a really kind of fertile collaboration. And then the last 150 pages of the book is the Model Citizen aspect of it, which is more kind of the relapsey things. You watch me like start to take more chances and start to put myself into situations, and they're getting more dangerous and they're getting more dangerous until I put myself in a situation that I don't weasel out of. And again, if I've done my job right, like every close call, like it's not my close call, it's our close call. So we keep like skirting around these things. And then finally, when I do something dumb, we're doing something dumb together. Because whether it's booze or drugs, it could be gambling for you, or food or sex or a bunch of other things that I haven't even thought about. It doesn't matter what it is, you have it. It might not be the same vices that I have, but it's there. And I think as we can kind of acknowledge these things, to me, like that becomes this healing exercise. We're all looking at each other around this big existential campfire being like, you're a fucking mess? Cool, I'm a fucking mess. Like, let's have a hug. Let's have a kiss because we're all in this together. And that's the thing I love about art. It brings us all and fosters community in this really vibrant way.
Yeah, I can never get the quote exactly right, but Baldwin has a great quote about how it was through reading literature that he discovered the stuff he thought was only happening to him and his pain and suffering. In literature, it made him see that, of course, it wasn't just his, but I never get the quote right, so I don't say it.
Well, I always think about it like this too, like, you know, storytellers have been having the same conversation since Scribbles on Cave Walls.
Yep.
We're just lucky right now that this is our 20 seconds on the planet to participate in that conversation, right? Before we turn it over to the next generation of storytellers, who turns it over to the next generation of storytellers. So in that standpoint, I just feel lucky to be on the team.
Agree.
I'm gonna wing some stuff at the wall. Hopefully it resonates with some people, and hopefully we make some pals along the way.
And also hold it open for whoever's next.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate of the knowledge transfer for sure.
Yeah. Richie asked, to what extent is this book a letter to Ava to tell her about her dad?
Gosh, it's a great question. You know, I think when I first had the heart surgery, Ava was only 18 months old at the time. And the way my life had typically worked out until that point was that, like, usually I get this close to something good happening and then like a baseball flies and hits me in the face. So I was convinced that I was going to die on the operating table. My third stroke was New Year's Day of January of 2015. And my heart surgery was scheduled for March 11th. So I had this 2-month window. So what I did was I wrote the entire rough draft of Sirens in that 2-month window, because I knew that if I was going to die, I would never hedge a bet. And I knew that I would never pull a punch. And that was going to make it the most true artifact that it could possibly be. So, you know, obviously I survived. Sorry to ruin the book for you. And then in the revision stage, it was more just a matter of like, I just needed to not get careful. I needed to be truthful for it, because to me, I thought that Ava and I had some awesome times during her first 18 months here. You know, like I put her feet in the ocean for the first time, right? Like I fed her pepperoni pizza. I painted the flaming lips on vinyl, for God's sakes. But she didn't know that. And so I had to make a decision. I never knew my father. Like I knew him, but he was a marvelous liar. I knew a veneer. I knew the persona of like a charismatic minister. And he never trusted me with the truth. I only found out what he was really like after he died. So then what I decided to do for Ava was I went overcorrected. I decided to leave everything in this kind of warts and all way, so she would have a living document.
Yeah.
She might not want to read it. That's fine. She might not like what she reads. That's fine too. But in order for me to like say, look, if I'm going to die here, that's one thing, but I want her to hear the story from me too. I don't just want to hear, I don't want to have her hear it secondhand the way that I had to hear it secondhand, because I don't know what was real or not.
Got it. Oh, that makes my heart do somersaults. Yeah. Oh God, that's so beautiful.
Well, this is beautiful, being around a bunch of friends. Are you guys having fun? It's so weird to not, there's no energy in these sorts of rooms. Everyone having a good time? All right, I got some thumbs up. Even Gail gave me some twinkle fingers. So, and if Gail's giving me twinkle fingers, I know that we must be doing a pretty good job.
There's always this question in there. Do you already know what you're working on next, or what you're working on now that isn't this book?
Well, when FSG bought the memoir, they also bought my next novel. So I've been working on this novel since actually before I started All This Life. So in 2012, I started writing a historical fiction book. I love the Barbary Coast in San Francisco. I mean, as you can imagine, Lydia, it's like so anarchical and lawless. It's like my dream come true. I also did it to kind of fuck with my agent a little bit, who told me she goes, you can't write another bar book. And I was like, oh yeah? What if I write a bar book in the Old West, motherfucker? Ha ha, they're wearing hats now. So the book is about the first female poker dealer in Gold Rush, San Francisco.
Oh, yeah.
And so it just took me forever to research. because I'd never done it before, and I'll never write another historical book. It was a total nightmare to put together. I love the work. Man, it was arduous.
Yes.
I would write a scene and it would sound like I was writing like a Wikipedia page. Like there was just no blood in the veins.
I know exactly what you mean.
SF historical writer named Janice Newman, who said to me one night when we were having coffee, she goes, "You need to remember that your characters in a historical book don't know they're living in the past. Like to them, it's the vibrant present." And it seems like an obvious observation, but wherever she worded it in such a way that it like totally locked in. And I knew exactly what my marching orders were moving forward. So that will be the next book. It's called Get Rich.
Oh, great. We'll watch for it. Somebody wants to know about the music you recently wrote. Oh, Alyssa. Alyssa wants to know, can you tell us about the music you recently wrote?
I don't know what that means. Maybe she means, well, I'll talk and then she can say something else in the chat function.
Okay.
Perhaps she's referring to the barn burner Christmas carol that I wrote with my daughter, "Hey everybody, put your freaking mask on," that like swept the internet like a wildfire. Oh my God. But she and I are always writing songs, singing songs together. She can sing Rancid, she can sing Green Day. Like I'm training her the right way. I'm gonna make her a weird artist like us, Lydia, whether she likes it or not.
I know, I keep waiting for Miles to like rebel and become a cop or a public. So far it's not happening. It's all good. It's all good. This is a craft question really quick, but I love the question. It has to do with your brevity of style. You use fewer words than some other writers. That's what I mean by brevity of style. And James wants to know, is that something you worked on over, like developed over time as a style, or were you always in that style, or?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that a lot of that happens on an intuitive level. I will say this, that, conventional wisdom is always kind of like write the book you want to read. And I like short books. Like I think about we were just talking about Baldwin's Another Country's not a very long novel, or Dennis Johnson's Jesus Son, or Amy Hempel's Reasons to Live. Like these are quick little bullets of a book. I mean, this is basically 2 books in one, so I know I'm kind of cheating a little bit. I like stuff that's evocative. I like writing that's 5 sense based. But I also like focusing on movements. And I want it to seem claustrophobic. Like, even in that excerpt that we read about stroke 4, like I'm trying to make me uncomfortable, ergo I'm trying to make the audience uncomfortable. And a lot of that concision happens as I'm revising, as I'm remixing, reading it out loud compulsively, move a word here, take a phrase here, take a sentence there, always trying to squeeze, always trying to compress. And the other thing I would say about this is I edited this in a way different way than I would edit a novel. Look, my daughter's trying to sneak by. I left mistakes in this that I would never leave in a novel. And what I mean I put the word mistakes in quotation marks. A memoirist should be looking at like that kiss between form and content. And I've lived a very punk rock life, and I wanted this to read like a punk rock book. I wanted
I see. Yeah.
Brain song. Right, so a Bad Brain song is short. The guitar is not in tune.
Got it.
The drummer's on coke. He's speeding up and slowing down. Like the singer's got laryngitis. I didn't sand edges down in this one that I would have if it was somebody else's story. But since it was my story, I wanted the form and the content to kind of be in lockstep to kind of pull off the techniques I was trying to pull off.
That's a brilliant suggestion for any of you writing nonfiction or memoir. Figure out what the coordinates and style and indications around your actual life are, and use that in terms of how you play it out on the page. You just got a great masterclass in style there with that answer.
What's interesting too is I always tell people about memoir that like your memoir should be in your speaking voice. And your memoir should sound like you're sitting on the bar stool next to the person and you're just whispering their story right in their ear. And if it has that intimacy as the starting point, 200, 300 pages later, you're going to foster this amazing camaraderie. That's always my goal, is to bring the reader as close to the action as I can bring her. Like, oh, you want to be in row 20 of the show? Now you're in row 15. That's not good enough. Now you're in row 10. Again, until you can feel kind of that spit hitting them in the face and from row 1.
I'm in.
I know you're in. And by the way, this spitting in the face metaphor is obviously pre-COVID. I don't want anybody spitting in anybody's face. I'll be safe.
But it's why you go to the concert too. You don't go in the concert to sit in the rafters. You go to the concert to get the feeling in you.
Yeah.
And that's how you
and to go back to the music metaphor too, our songs as memoirists or as creative writers, they're made up of diction and syntax. Like what is your word choice? Like what are your sentence structures? Like, I'm a big believer in the grammar malfunction. Like, I know the rules, but like I don't follow the rules very often because I want it to sound as though I'm talking to you. Yeah. So a lot of people, when they're writing memoirs, suddenly get self-conscious and they're like, perhaps I should use the word lugubrious. Aren't I so intelligent? Like, it has to sound like the way you talk. And if it doesn't sound like the way you talk, you're fronting. And if you're fronting, you're lying.
Yeah, it's a performance. Exactly. And you don't want to tell the story of your life in the voice of somebody you've never met.
No. I mean, in fact, that's a great way to say it, because you could argue that that's an ulterior motive in your own art.
Yep.
How fucking sad is that?
Yeah. Yeah, agree. I love getting to talk to you. I miss you, my friend.
I kind of feel like you and I should just like have a podcast where like once a week we use like a book as a starting point, and then by like 20 minutes in we're talking about metaphysical crazy stuff.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Oh,
anybody else have a question for Josh? Oh, Mary's in our podcast. Mary wants.
Oh, good. Thanks for the listen. That's good. We got one listener. Yes, that's where the big money comes in. Oh, and Panina's here too. I did a Panina series last night, Franklin Park. We had a great time.
Oh, they're all in. Okay, so it's done deal. We're going to make a podcast.
Let's do it. And thank you everybody for being here. Could everyone just like unmute their microphone so we can just have like one big 100-person moment together?
Oh, they can't.
Would you like to?
You can now.
Congratulations, Josh.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Love you guys.
Oh
my God, you're the Mohr.
Where'd he go?
Babies, children, dogs, and cats sleeping together.
Bravo. Thank you.
Good night.
Have a great night. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it.
Hey,
Good everybody.
Night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
great job, Josh. Great job. Lydia.
Podcast.
Good job, Josh.
My mom's here. Hi, Mom. Oh my God. Oh, Margaret's here. Hi, Margaret.
Hi.
Here. This is so fun.
Where'd Ava go?
Grandma wants to see Ava.
There she is.
Oh,
This is the family.
Hi.
Hi, Ava.
These are all your friends. They've been reading
Friends
about
stuck
you.
around.
Oh,
Yeah, they know you better. They're like already your pals. Isn't that cool?
Hi, Leota. Hi, Leota.
Lydia, thank you so much for doing this.
my pleasure. I just bawled like somebody's grandma.
If I can ever do you a favor, you know I'll do it in a heartbeat.
I'll call you.
Do it in a heartbeat. We'll be next time we come to Portland, we'll have to do it. Who
Okay.
else is here? Oh, Zandra and Cecile and Chelsea, the Wendy's, Jarrett,
Bye.
Mark Brownlow, how are you?
Hey, Josh.
So cool. Jared, how
Good.
are you?
Hey, pal. I
How are the
I
twins?
tuned in even though I'm baby wrangling over here. Hi, Ava.
Jared's got 1-year-old twins, so he's running around like a crazy person all the time.
I
Oh
made
my
it
God.
though. Hi, Lydia. Great job tonight.
Wonderful. And
Miss you
Peter
all.
Maravellis, thank you so much for another successful City Lights event. We love you.
Always a pleasure, my
Oh,
friend.
we love it.
Always a pleasure.
You have fun?
Lydia, thank you so much. That was perfect. I just feel like I've had a really rich meal or something, you know, just
Mhm.
waiting for those happy chemicals to like,
A little bit of dopamine coming from a Zoom room. It's always a nice thing, right?
true.
Oh,
So much fun. So, hey, everybody, if you haven't bought a book, now is the time. The
now's the time. Oh, hey, Mike
link
Manson, how
has
are
been
you?
posted in the chat function. And, we're going to be actually posting this on YouTube. So if you know anyone who could not make tonight's event, we'll be sending out emails to everybody. And then so just forward the link. And of course, you could always watch it for your own viewing pleasure. Subscribe to our newsletter. A lot of events coming up. We also publish books, as many of you know, kind of in the grand spirit of our late founder, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, continuing his legacy. Some really cool events coming up. We've got Caribbean Fregosa, Seshu Foster, Todd Miller, many, many more. So please do check out our website, check out our calendar, and please, everyone, be safe, be well. We love you all, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you, City Lights.
Thank you.
Kisses. Keep fighting the good fight, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.